Hi, and welcome to our webcast of June 17, 2016. My name is Christian Aubry, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disability and are alive. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. Today's topic, because there's only one today, Senate and House of Action on Bill 6014.
Thanks.
So, Amy will talk about it.
Okay. Senate and House action on Bill C-14. On Wednesday, the Senate voted 64-12 with one abstention to accept its amended version of Bill C-14. But yesterday, the House of Commons voted to send the bill back to the Senate, minus the amendment that allows anyone with a grievous and irremediable medical condition to have assisted suicide or euthanasia.
Which is a good news for us.
Right.
In a bad situation anyway.
Right, exactly. So in addition to its amendment that removes the requirement that death be reasonably foreseeable to qualify for assisted suicide or euthanasia, the Senate made 6 other amendments to Bill C-14 in the past week, most of which the House did accept. So what happens is the Senate made an amendment that canceled the requirement that the person be at the end of life and sent the bill to the House of Commons. And the House of Commons said, no, we want the bill the way we originally wrote it, means the person has to be at the end of life. And so they canceled the Senate's amendment and they sent it back to the House. And they also eliminated one other amendment that the Senate passed, but they let all the others go through.
Which for the other amendment is, let's say, fairly good for us.
It would have been good for us. It would have prevented people who have an interest in the inheritance of somebody from participating in their assisted suicide. Another amendment passed by the Senate would require that a person seeking assisted suicide and euthanasia be informed of options for palliative care and other alternatives to ending his or her life. So that's a good amendment for us because we're hoping that people will be informed of alternatives. But of course, that doesn't mean that being informed of alternatives, that doesn't mean that people will be helped to get those alternatives.
Yeah, so it's at least informative, but it's not very strong.
Right, and also that doesn't include an assessment of somebody's vulnerability to assisted suicide. And right now there is a requirement that the doctor determine if the person is receiving external pressure, but no determination that the person is vulnerable in any other way. So it's not very strong. The Senate rejected an amendment that would have permitted advanced requests for assisted suicide and euthanasia for people who anticipate that they will be incompetent when their suffering becomes intolerable. This would, for example, allow people with dementia to make their assisted suicide contingent on some future event. The danger, however, is that the person could decide that she no longer wants to die, but would be unable to change her advance directive. And that, of course, is a significant danger because a lot of people, once they become disabled, they realize, well, it's really not that bad and they can live with it. But if they have dementia and they're not considered competent and they want to change their mind, it would be much harder to do if they have an advance directive.
So it's very dangerous.
Right, exactly. A proposal to make a similar measure apply after 2 years, so 2 years after the law comes into effect, there would be an advance directive measure, and another to enable people to make advance directives in their wills were also defeated. The original bill already contains a provision to study the possibility of allowing advance directives.
So the slippery slope that we speak about since a lot of years now, it's becoming more a heavy slope.
Right, exactly. So just because the advance directives aren't in the law now doesn't mean they won't be. And in fact, it won't be voted on by Parliament. It's just going to be studied. And if they decide, well, I don't know if it'll be voted on in Parliament. I don't know if it would just be ordered by a parliamentary commission that it be added to the law, because we don't know what the study is going to come up with. So,
and it's easy to trick a study.
Right, exactly. We don't know how they're going to go about it and who's going to be on the panel to do the study. So,
and we have to remember that the fear of suffering,
right, the fear of disability
are so strong, and fear is a sentiment, and you could not fight against sentiment. It's very difficult.
You can't
logical just fly away, and sentiment just goes on.
Right, right. Another amendment to remove nurse practitioners from the list of those allowed to determine eligibility and perform assisted suicide was narrowly defeated last Monday. The ball is now in the Senate's court. It must now decide if it will accept the bill without its important amendment or reject it. Some senators have indicated that they will defer to the elected House of Commons, but others have said that the bill is unconstitutional and unacceptable with the end-of-life requirement, and they will vote against the bill.
So Senator, who are really democratic people, said, okay, they are elected, they work more than us, and the other one said, no, we want what we said.
Right, exactly. And they think that because they believe it's unconstitutional, that their view should prevail. That's what they think.
Yes, and it's partly true, at least.
Well, if it's unconstitutional, but there's a disagreement about whether it's
there is a agreement, because there precedent that some law are defining some groups to apply on it only. But normally, when you try to define a groups, you always discriminate somebody else, and it's maybe unconstitutional.
Right. It may or may not be, because the Parliament has the power to make laws that go beyond what the Supreme Court says if it doesn't violate the Charter of Rights. And according to according to several constitutional scholars, this provision doesn't violate the Charter of Rights. And also, the government's goals for this law are more diverse than the original law. So that the government is claiming that this doesn't violate the Charter of Rights, and it will be up to the Supreme Court to make that decision, meaning it's up to the Supreme Court and not to the Senate whether that decision, whether it's unconstitutional or not. Yesterday, the Vulnerable Person Standard Coalition held a forum in Ottawa to show the support of the disability community for the end-of-life provision of Bill C-14. The forum was simulcast on the internet, and many viewers sent messages explaining why they felt the reasonably foreseeable death requirement must be in the final legislation.
Very important message, very, sentimental.
Right, very, very powerful messages that were sent by people, very articulate messages that were sent by people from all over the country. So it was a good forum. The minister in charge of disability affairs, Carla Qualtrough, addressed the forum, announcing that the government will continue to press for the end-of-life provision. Other speakers included Bonnie Brayton from Disabled Women's Network of Canada, Dr. Harvey Chochinov, a palliative care physician, and me from
Yes,
Toujours Not Dead
we
Yet.
was there.
Right. And I spoke about how disabled people are often considered disposable, and how assisted suicide makes disabled people considered disposable. So that's why we need the reasonably foreseeable death requirement, because disabled people should not be considered disposable.
Yes.
So, for more, there are many reasons to oppose the legalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia, and here are just a few of them. First of all, it's unnecessary because everyone already has the option to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and to have palliative sedation on demand.
We have proof of that.
Right. We have a video that you can find on our YouTube page where we interviewed a fellow who actually did starve himself to death.
And starvation, when you receive palliative care, it's not awful at all.
Right. It took him a little over 6 weeks. He was still taking fluids, and he had palliative care while he starved himself to death. And so he didn't need the assisted suicide law. This happened before it went into effect.
And he could have choose not to have fluid.
Right.
It goes a lot faster, but he
Right.
doesn't want to go fast. He has to talk to people.
Right. Right. Also, another reason to oppose it is because it's discriminatory. While people without disabilities receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die, people with disabilities will be encouraged and assisted to kill themselves. And that's obviously a double standard that we consider discriminatory.
Yes.
Also, choice is an illusion. The choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have a choice in where and how we live.
Almost every day in all the part of country, you saw story about care units, long-term care units, said that the lack of manpower, they have abuse, they have bad care unit, or
Right.
bad not enough, and the food are not good, so on, so on. So it became very, very obvious that if you live in a bad long care home, you have choice between to be mistreated or death.
Right,
What we have
exactly.
to talk about is there is other choice.
Right, they have to create other choices.
Yes, we
by
have.
giving more funding to home-based services, so people can choose their own assistants to provide services in the home and have enough hours per week to do all the chores that are necessary for a person to live at home and not have to depend on family members and burn out their family to provide assistance. And as long as those things are not available, that's discrimination. And so without those things, choice is an illusion. And finally, safeguards don't work. Where these practices are legal, safeguards don't prevent people with disabilities from being wrongly killed. The goal of our online discussion is to give disabled people a place to talk about these issues among ourselves and from our point of view, which is pretty different from the religious and conservative people who talk about this issue, because they often talk about, pro-life and anti-abortion and that sort of thing, and that's not generally our issue.
We don't speak about it,
right.
And even that, we are not religious at all.
Right, and we're not politically conservative, and we have a progressive agenda, so it's a more comfortable place to talk about it. We also want to recognize our experience and expertise in dealing with discrimination in the medical system, because people with disabilities have more experience in those things.
Oh, yes.
And those are very important areas of expertise that we bring to this debate. And finally, we want to take our place in the public debate, aside from conservatives and quote-unquote progressives.
Which are not.
Right, which, well, on this matter, they really don't understand that they're not taking the progressive view. To view our videos, go to YouTube or use a search engine and type in the term euthanasia and disability, and you'll find one of our videos. And we have more than 75 videos online now, both in English and in French, dealing with this issue. And it might seem like this is a very narrow issue, but there's a lot of material to be covered, and we have a lot of videos.
Yeah, all are for information. Sorry, it's not funny. It's not a funny show. Right. But there's so much information, and most, if not all, are traceable and verifiable.
Right, right. To participate live, you can send me your email address, and I will send you a link to join us live. You can also keep an eye on our Facebook page, because there will be links that come up to join us online about 15 minutes before the program starts. For more information on the subjects we discuss, go to facebook.com/toujourvivant, not dead yet, all one word. You can also visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks very much to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
And thanks to you for being there. Until next time.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.